Did you put Christmas on a credit card? Don't stress out about that extra holiday spending. SaveWithConrad.com can help you consolidate all of your high interest rate credit cards into one much lower monthly payment. SaveWithConrad.com has helped families just like yours save up to $800 a month. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. And did I mention no payments until March? So don't make saving money a resolution next year. Make it happen today at SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
Well, the voice of wrestling is in Norman, Oklahoma today, and I've been in Norman, Oklahoma for the past several days. Seems like a long time that I've been sentenced to this. But knock on wood, as I am right now here in my office. Hear that knock, Conrad?
Yes,
That's me knocking on wood right there.
Got it.
So sound effects adding to our program. High production values. We're farting through silk here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a big-time deal. I am getting very bored, but I'm also very respectful of this virus that too many people are getting sick and dying. And because I'm in the quote-unquote high-risk group because of my age, AEW being a little bit careful with me, which I appreciate. So, you know, it's a change in our lives, man. I can't imagine how a lot of other people are reacting. People in New York City and you got L.A. I saw a shot the other day, Conrad, on the news of L.A. traffic that I had never seen in my entire life. Even when I was there at the middle of the night, there was more traffic than what I see right now. Unbelievable. In our lifetime, if you'd asked me a year ago or whatever, oh, hell, this ain't going to happen to us, man. We got too many smart people, too many smart scientists. They'll get a vaccine. You know, they won't kayfabe us on the vaccine like they kayfabe us on a lot of medicines. So it's been tough, man. I hit my grocery store about every other day. I'm grilling, so I'm cooking my own stuff and you know, just making the best out of it. I started binge watching different things. Have you seen that thing on Netflix with that goofy fucker from Oklahoma? He's not from Oklahoma.
We're talking about Joe Exotic, of course, Tiger King. It swept the internet last weekend. People absolutely loved it. Maybe it was the weekend before. I don't know. It's been out for a couple weeks now, and people have lost their minds about this. And I could not wait to click record to you and talk about your fellow Oklahomian.
God, please. That'd be like saying that the greatest Alabaman is, what's that, the little governor's name a long time ago?
Oh, come on now. That's not fair.
That's what I'm saying. It's not fair. What was his name?
I'm not even going to tell you about Mr. Wallace.
Oh, George. Yeah. I grew up with George Wallace, the African-American comedian who's funnier than hell, but this guy he's not a good representation of Alabama.
No.
And neither is Joe Exotic, who reminded me of a very poor, but thinks he's great indie wrestler.
Well,
the hair, the guns, the big belt buckles, all the attire. You know, he was always dressed for show.
He had more gimmicks than DDP in 1994.
Oh my God, Conrad.
He looks like serious business. He is the missing member of a 6-man tag between Michael Hayes and DDP.
Boy, that'd draw some cash, wouldn't it? They'd be fighting over mic time. Okay, we were going to give you guys 2 minutes, but because there's 3 of you and you can't stop talking, you just do the hour talking. So so I watched that. You know, I've been on this crime scene, or what's it called?
CSI. NCIS.
SVU.
Oh, there you go.
I'm an SVU guy because I like Mariska Hargitay pretty much. Boy, me, her, and a BlueChew would be danger. Danger.
I was thinking maybe, you know, we should sort of hit the reset button on Netflix and what folks who watch that special or that series think of Oklahoma. And instead of having Tiger King, we could have, you know, like Cooter King for you.
Yeah, right.
The Jim Ross story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you're, you know, doing your own sort of cougar training there, or, you know what?
I do a lot of recruiting.
Cougar King. That's it.
A lot of recruiting. Some are cougars, some are not, have not attained cougar status. But here's the deal about that. People think JR is crazy. Look, we embellish a lot here. Come on. We're having fun.
Sure.
But the other issue, Conrad, is I say this a lot over the years, and, you know, tomorrows aren't guaranteed here
That's right.
in this world. So if I can bring a little joy to my life and without hurting anybody, without breaking any laws and the privacy of my own home, what the hell? Why not? Why not? I'm an empty nester. Here I am. So I'm not doing it out of all of a sudden JR's become this pervert. No, I'm a normal man that is alone, and I enjoy the company of ladies. So shame on my ass. And I know that's going to derail my goddamn push, Conrad. My push is over because I like the ladies. I am so damn sorry. I fall on my sword, ladies and gents.
Well, I don't want to talk about your sword anymore. Let's talk about WrestleMania 2000. Of course, this is WrestleMania 16, but it was marketed as WrestleMania 2000. It went down 20 years ago, April 2nd at the Pond in Anaheim. So today is the exact 20-year anniversary of this show. This is the same building that held WrestleMania 12 in 1996. Of course, that one was headlined by Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in the Iron Man match. This one draws 18,034 fans. 16,716 were paying customers. There's a live gate here of 1.347 million and has a 2.08 buy rate. The merchandise figure is 277 grand, which is believed to be an all-time United States record of $19.98 per head, which broke the WrestleMania 14 record of $17.41. So really remarkable business indicators here that you've got a gate of just 16,700 fans for 1.3 million. Well, unbelievable. But the thing that I really gravitate to in this breakdown, two things, I guess. The first is the per head of the merchandise. I first had this on my radar back in 1997. Meltzer would break down, here's how much was merch and here's how much that breaks down per head. It's a nice metric to see, hey, what can, besides the ticket price, what sort of add-on can, as we as a company expect, when they hit the merch stand? And $19.98 feels like that's nearly double what you guys would normally get.
It's a lot of money. And what it means, folks, is that, everybody that came through the turnstiles spent almost, $20 each on merch. Everybody. That was the average. So, it was successful. I mean, was the event an artistic success? We'll talk about that. But was it a financial success? Without a doubt, obviously.
Yeah, it's amazing to see what's possible here. The company has really never been hotter. You're still not running giant stadiums yet, but that can't be far away. We know what's coming the next year in Houston for WrestleMania 17. Let's talk a little bit about the attendance. This has always been something that's been hotly debated, especially by guys like Bruce Pritchard and Dave Meltzer. Meltzer would report here that there's 18,034 fans here. As we said, 16,716 paying, but what's announced on TV is more than both of those. It's 19,776. And I think this became a little bit of who's on first over the years. I've been led to believe that what the WWE would announce, the 19,776, is the number of total persons in the building, which would have included the cast and crew of WWE, plus building staff, plus security, et cetera, et cetera. Is that the way you understood it?
I think that's the way I get it. I believe, Meltzer's numbers were always, as I understand, based on, athletic commission, data.
Right.
Here's what we're paying tax on.
Sure.
And knowing how McMahon is a stickler on dealing fairly with the government, in regard to his taxes and the money and all that stuff, he taught me some good lessons in that regard and for my life, that, he ain't going to screw with the government and he's not going to screw around on not paying the taxes. So I would lend to believe, that the 18,034 paid or in attendance rather is more accurate than the 19 and change. But either way, you're talking nickels and dimes, a few people here, a few people there. But I do think that the WWE number includes everybody that's in the building.
Let's keep it moving. Let's talk a little bit about where we are creatively. You mentioned earlier, we're coming off of No Way Out, which is where Triple H would defeat Mick Foley in the Hell in a Cell match. And because of the stipulations, he has to retire. Of course, we know that retirement's not going to last long, but we'll get to that soon enough. This isn't the most memorable or the most talked about WrestleMania in history, but 2000 was really a banner year for the company. a lot of memorable things happen, but this WrestleMania doesn't really rank among them as far as the most memorable moments from 2000. Why do you think that is? Why is this such a forgettable WrestleMania show if it's such a banner year for the company?
Much like WrestleMania this year, in my view, as a fan, there's no singular focus. The WrestleMania 2000 card was booked more like an ensemble cast without any singular stars whose name would go above the title of the event, so to speak. I think it had everything to do with the booking. It was an all-star card. I mean, you go back and look at this card, as we'll talk about, and look at the Hall of Famers, the guys that made millions of dollars, that became very, very successful. It was dotted with big-time talent. And I was very proud of that roster, quite frankly. But the issue is that the plays that were called, like a great football team, like the Oklahoma Sooners, or maybe even the Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide, is the fact that we didn't call the right plays. You know, your main event had a heel winning, and you had 4 men in a match. You had triple threats. You had tags. You had three-way ladders and chairs, and oh my. It was hard to get a singular focus like the next year. You mentioned the next year, WrestleMania 17 in Houston. Massive crowd. One of my all-time favorite days of my entire career. But it had Rock and Austin. It had a singular focus on top. And those are infinitely easier to promote. I wonder now, there's so much bits and pieces of information on the WWE WrestleMania that I don't know, Conrad. It don't seem like it has the buzz. And I think that's kind of what our show had out there. We had a guy, one of the most popular stars, retire, then unretire a few weeks later. I didn't think that helped us any, quite frankly. It took a little bit of the edge off. I'm not knocking Mick. He just run the plays. But I think the card was the booking was the main thing in a nutshell that why that card did not deliver. It was just a hodgepodge, a collective booking, ensemble cast. I'm not a big ensemble cast guy. I'm not a big guy for the WrestleMania main event to end with a heel win. Just me, old school. I get it. But a lot of fundamental things I think were done. Fundamental things were done wrong in that show, but it was led by creative.
Let's talk about where the business is. You know, we've talked a lot about business on this show, but let's do like a year by year comparison. In February of 99, your average attendance is 14,082 fans. We're actually down 15.9% to 11,842 fans by February of 2000.
You know why that is, right? Austin's hurt. Undertaker's hurt. Some of the major attractions were not available for the live events. It affected ticket sales. And the impact that Stone Cold had on WWE, WWF, whatever, was certainly significant. We know that. But when you go look at these numbers, you see that, Austin's unavailability to be on these cards and to be involved deeply in the storylines like he was as a catalyst was a major impact.
It's really interesting to take a look at the glaring omissions of Undertaker and Stone Cold on the way to this show. But this WrestleMania is going to have the debuts of Edge, Christian, Eddie Guerrero, Jeff Hardy, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, and Chris Benoit. Just an all-star crew here.
Now, Conrad, let me ask this question. What blithering goddamn idiot with a Southern accent and can't smile signed those bastards? That's a pretty good little addition to the pretty good debut there. It was a new era. And like I said, I'm bullshitting, but Monsoon would say, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back. I do that all the time. Sorry. But the WrestleMania we're talking about here, 16, 2000, to me was more significant for the guys that debuted and made their first foray into the big show and at the big dance than anything on the card, because I didn't think a lot of things that I expected to be bad were bad, but nothing was horrible. It just wasn't great. There was not a breakthrough. Goddamn, man, you got to watch this one. Except maybe the ladder match with the Edge and Christian and Dudley's and the Hardys. That was a show stealer.
Let's keep it going with our comparison. So even though we tell you that attendance is down 15.9%, Because the product's gotten so hot, the company can charge more for tickets. So even though there's less fans in the crowd, in fact, 16% less, the money's up 6.3%. Your average gate in February 99 is 302 grand. Here in February of 2000 is 321 grand. You're still selling out 68% of your shows, and ratings are up 1.4% from a 5.7 to a 5.8. It's remarkable that, you know, all the business indicators are there that this is still a very, very healthy business, even without Stone Cold. Let's talk about Beyond the Mat. It's around this era where this movie is released. And even though Vince had granted him access and even was interviewed for it, it's been said that he's not really the biggest fan of it once it actually becomes a thing. And he's even trying to bury the movie. He wants to do what he can to not promote it, not be involved with it, stop it from getting any sort of traction. It only has a limited release, 298 theaters. It's going to draw 950 grand on its opening weekend, which is $3,188 per screen as an average, which is considered respectable. It's going to rank number 19 in the first weekend it's out as far as the box office tally. But chat me up. Why did Vince sort of have a change of heart? I mean, eventually they would even promote the movie as the movie Vince McMahon doesn't want you to see. What do you remember about this paradigm shift that Vince McMahon had towards the movie?
Well, I just think he thought about it more, and in an emotional moment with all these guys that were on this roster, Foley and Jake, Terri Funk, guys that he knew and worked with. He was going to give them an opportunity to make a couple of bucks, it seems to me like. And then he had second thoughts. He went against his basic instinct. His basic instinct is, I don't produce or promote anything that I don't own or control, or that or they buy time like an advertiser. And then, of course, he can check that off the box, yes or no. I'll take the order we want. I just think he probably had second thoughts on it, and it was it also showed a real dark and we're here in this time where a lot of people are talking about the dark side of the ring. It showed a very dark side of wrestling that was also obviously real, but Vince did not want to have a hand in promoting that image. So that's kind of how that worked with me. You know, it was allegedly, as I remember, and my current manager now, Barry Bloom, was involved in that with Barry Blaustein. I remember, as best I can recall, Conrad, it was pitched to us as a small indie art film. So it would be something that would be play these small movie theaters, get limited release. It was a kind of a passion project. But all of a sudden, it became, it made money. And none of us got any money for the time that we spent in it. I spent hours on that movie, lining up talent, interviewing, being a liaison of sorts, among others, or others of us doing the same, basically trying to cooperate. And we didn't get shit. Nothing. Not the offer. Hey, what can we pay you for this? What can we pay you for your time? Hey, we want to give you $1,000 to go out and have a nice dinner or whatever. Nothing. So I think that was part of the issue with me, but I think Vince just probably had second thoughts once he saw the grittiness and the coarseness of it, that it was maybe not something that he wanted to promote, because him promoting it on our air would be the same as him endorsing it, obviously. Now, the movie people, Blaustein and Bloom, would love that because they'd have made even more money that we would not have got a share of. But that's kind of where I think about it on that deal. I watched it years ago. It's not my favorite film. I was uncomfortable with it. I don't know what that means to the listeners. Didn't like seeing those guys in these positions. So now in today's world, like I mentioned earlier, the dark side of the ring, it would just be another documentary. But it's worth watching. If you haven't seen Beyond the Mat, you should watch if you're a wrestling fan, just for your education, for the history lesson. But today's marketplace, Conrad, hell, it's not that outrageous. Then it was.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that. I mean, they even reject. Apparently, there was a contract in place to promote the movie inside WWE programming. And then, of course, WWE rejects that and says, no, we've decided against it and we're allowed to. And Ron Howard, who the Imagine Entertainment promotion that funded the movie, said he felt like McMahon had a couple of different motives here, but one of the ones that stood out to me was, he believed McMahon objected to the way wrestlers were presented as real people as opposed to cartoon characters. And I think some folks believed that Vince was upset that no one was compensated and they were using his IP in order to make it a money-making venture, sort of the way you said. But what do you think of the Ron Howard objection that no, it's not the money. It's that Vince doesn't want his wrestlers to be seen as real people as opposed to cartoon characters?
Well, he didn't want he didn't want our wrestlers to be seen as, everybody's not like those guys that were featured. Everybody didn't have CTE issues or other ailments or drug and alcohol issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of what you got. Well, this is behind the look of 3 pro wrestlers. You can't say random because you picked them out. And you knew they had some baggage and some issues to travel with them. So, Ron Howard and Vince were neighbors in Greenwich. They probably still are. I went to a Christmas party there one year. Me and Jan got invited to a Christmas party at Vince's house. And he had a big tent sitting outside. I remember it was colder than shit. It was a fun party, especially watching Vince dance. He's like the female version of Elaine in Seinfeld. He actually believes he may be the world's greatest Caucasian dancer. However, that is a point of contention to those that have watched it. In any event, Ron Howard was there, and I didn't get on the dance floor, and neither did Ron, but we did have a couple of cocktails, moderately. He and I talked about him being in the movie The Shootist with John Wayne and Lauren Bacall. So that was my Christmas night, one of my favorite memories. But Ron and Vince were okay. They're okay, but Ron may be right. Hell, I don't know, Conrad. I don't really know. I don't know about why he changed his fucking mind. He changed his mind. How many times have you heard that from guys? He changed his mind. We spent a lot of time, energy, and resources on this project, and we're not able to share in any of the revenue. So he made a bad deal on the front side by letting them do that, in my opinion. Yep. He thought about it more and changed his mind. That's about the best explanation I could give you.
Let's talk about, since we're talking about Beyond the Mat, everybody's knee deep in Dark Side of the Ring. Of course, a couple of days ago, they saw the story of New Jack. Couldn't really comment on that one too much, but
what's that about? I didn't see that.
You had, last week, I'm sure you saw, as the rest of the world did, the story of Chris Benoit, and you were a big part of that one.
Right.
What did you think of the final product? I mean, obviously you knew what you said because they came to your house and filmed it several months ago, but you saw it all pieced together probably for the first time with everybody else last week. What did you think?
Oh, great work by those guys. Production was good. The continuity, the writing, the editing was spectacular. Sad as hell. Very believable. It opened up a lot of old wounds that we think were healed, but they really weren't. I was very close to Chris, and the hardest, tightest hug I ever received in my life was from Chris Benoit. And he hurt his neck. We were in Atlanta doing TV. He was hurt. He was out. So we finally got the diagnosis and specialists and all these things to see him. And so we had 2 options. We could go, I can't remember. I think the front of the neck, he'd be out a year. And if they went through the backside, he'd be out like half that long. But the second surgery was more temporary. It was a Band-Aid. And the way he worked, you can't Band-Aid that up. So I made the decision that we'd do the surgery with a year out. And he was very worried about that because he was assuming he would not be paid. And I think much to the WWE's credit, he got his check every week, all while he was out. Even though you can say, well, he got hurt in the ring. What ring? Whose ring? What year? What decade? But it didn't matter. We felt like it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do, and we got him fixed. And I said, I'm gonna make the decision. He couldn't make the decision. I said, okay, I'm gonna make the decision for us. I told him the year. He got a look on his face like, oh shit, I can't live a year without pay. And I said, and we're going to pay you every week, Chris. You're not going to miss a check. You have my word on it. And then he grabbed me. I thought he was going to give me a belly-to-belly suplex. He had me gripped so tight. And I remember, and the last time, and every time I've gone back to that arena in Atlanta, I remember exactly where we were standing, and when that happened. So it was I just thought it was very well done. It's a compelling story, compelling as hell, no doubt. But when it happens to people that you know so well, I remember at WrestleMania 18, Jan and I had dinner with Chris and Nancy. And we were friends. I mean, Jan and Nancy got along great. They really did. They got along so good. And then Chris liked the normality of things. And he liked being away from wrestling when he could. But when Eddie died, that changed the game big time, which we can, to me, that was about as important an element of the story as there was. Chris lost a lot of his will to be happy and to live when his buddy died. And I don't think everybody really realizes how close they were. So, but I thought that Evan Husky and those guys did a fucking great job, man. They killed it, and the editing was great. They're students of the game. He's got a great little tight-knit crew. Those cats do, and they do a nice job. And I'm really glad I got to work with them. And I've done some other work with them as well. They'll be coming out in soon in the future. But it was good. If you're a wrestling fan, if you're a fan of documentaries, if you're a fan of crime dramas or that type thing, I think you would probably be well served to check it out.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I think I thought season 1 was great. I think season 2 is another level. I've like everybody listening to this by now seen the New Jack episode, and the Brawl for All episode has an epic meltdown situation in it. I know you were a part of that one too. Really great stuff coming. Check your local listings, but it's going to be on Vice. I have DirecTV, so I have Vice. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's Tuesdays on Vice. Set your recorder, look for it. Dark Side of the Ring. Let's talk about, in early March, the New York Daily News, they run a 3-part story on professional wrestling. And the first part talks about the popularity of wrestling. And the second part talks about drugs in wrestling. And in the story, they talk a lot about Brian Pillman with quotes from his wife, Melanie, who's talking about the use of steroids and HGH and painkillers, and how perhaps all of that played a role in Pillman passing away. Of course, Meltzer writes a lot about this. He was really, really close with Brian. Meltzer finds himself trying to sort of break down the article, talk about the doctors, talk about McMahon. And he says McMahon in the article claimed, "We've got zero to hide here." What role did you think the company should have played or did play in policing the narrative? Like, wrestlers are going to do what they do. And obviously you have been a big part of trying to implement testing policies and procedures. And we've talked about that a lot, and I'm sure we continue to do that. But when the mainstream media, like the New York Daily News here, when they come out and start to go swinging at your industry and you're sort of the top figure, and they're examining the death of one of your guys for right or wrong, a lot of folks think they need to defend it. Do you think Vince handled that the right way? What was the approach? What can you tell us about that?
Oh man, that's a complex question and a long question, Conrad. I don't know even how to approach that question, to be honest with you. He was protective of the business, or tried to be, and certainly his own business, which he should be. The fact about Vince is so goddamn, here's the deal. And I can tell in your tone, your questions, and I know you're representing the audience as am I trying to do. But the issue is that, Vince is not always a bad guy.
Oh no, let me be clear. I think, and I say this from the perspective of a business owner, when someone says something like this, yes, we want to have some compassion and sympathy for those who have left us, but we've also got to fight for those who are still here. Because realistically, even in this era in 2000, if Vince folded up shop and said, "You know what, that's enough wrestling, I think I'm done," Vince is set for life. But there are thousands of employees who feed their kids and have access to insurance, and this is their livelihood. And so when someone comes out and has allegations or makes claims or whatever, you feel an obligation to dig your heels in and fight for your cast and crew and your staff and the folks that you employ.
Right.
But it's a fine line, because on the one hand, if we're discussing something like drug testing, it's a matter of, are we not standing up for them when we're defending it, or because in regards to the person who's passed away, or are we doing the right thing for the greater good for those who are still here by defending it?
You got to defend your company. You got to defend your business, in my view, within reason. As long as you're honest and upfront. You're right about the others that you got to look out for the others that are still there. But in regard to this, look, the material that was mined and produced and created and featured was negative as shit and Beyond the Mat.
Yeah.
It was a smear. And those guys like Barry Blaustein always proclaimed he was a lifelong, loyal, loving wrestling fan. But the movie had very little balance in my estimation. My opinion, that's all. As a viewer and as a wrestling fan, and as someone who has probably made more money in wrestling than Barry Blaustein. So, shit, man. I just thought it was very one-sided. It was the same old thing. And look, it's kind of like that Joe Exotic deal we're talking about. I watched the damn thing with these idiots, the goddamn, you can only imagine what was going on down there in that place. Good God Almighty! But the Joe Exotic thing it got to be monotonous to me. It was the same shit.
Right.
Another challenge, another promo, another on camera opportunity. This guy liked the camera more than anybody I've ever seen. So, but that was the deal here. I think with these guys, I think that it was just so one-sided. It was so negative. And of course, knowing that you're getting some fresh dirt that the media can run with, the Larry Kings of the world, for example, all that was doing was creating a thing where, well, wrestling needs to be cleaned up. It's amazing to me you son of a bitches don't say shit about when we do something good.
Yeah.
When we have over $1 million gate and we have 18,000 people show up in LA, in Anaheim, of all places, nothing wrong with Anaheim. But you don't talk about that. That doesn't make the papers. That doesn't make the USA Today. But a review on this movie and telling that is it time for a cleanup? Are you shitting me? Is it time to clean up vaudeville? Is it time to clean up Broadway? I don't know. Is it time to clean up the movie business? It's all subjective, and it's all kind of stupid, quite frankly. So I don't know. I think Vince made the right calls on those things on Beyond the Mat. Hey, look, I do business every day with Barry Bloom. He's my guy. I'm not mad at him about it. I'm not mad at Barry Blaustein. I haven't seen him in years. But the fact that a lot of us had a lot of skin and time and effort and got nothing for it isn't right. It's not good business.
Well, so you're saying, I think you're trying to draw it all together here, that perhaps the interest in the Beyond the Mat movie spurred the New York Daily News to do their own sort of expose and story. Because once it feels like, there's maybe an issue, maybe everybody wants to get their fair share of clicks or downloads or sell the right number of newspapers, right?
Exactly. And you got Ron Howard involved, very respected, as he should be, a genius, has a wonderful reputation in our country, around the world, and especially in the entertainment world. And so all of a sudden now he's a player in this deal. So that's why you saw some talk shows about it, and guys want to go on and talk about the situation, as if there's just so much hypocrisy when talents go on some of those shows and they're going to do all these tell-alls and all this other bullshit. And I would suggest to you, Conrad, that well over probably 90% of their own problems they cause themselves. Nobody made somebody do stupid things like that. Drugs, alcohol, abuse, excess. Nobody made you do it. But it's good to fade the heat, as they say in wrestling. and let somebody else take the fall. And that's kind of what I saw in some of these panel shows, all about, and that came back to Vince. God damn, McMahon must be a tyrant. He must have no conscience. He must not have any feelings. So that's how I looked at it. I thought it was a shit show, quite frankly. I'll stand by my guns. If you haven't seen it, try to check it out. Maybe I'm overreacting because JR had a very passionate point that day on his podcast with Conrad, and they were going crazy, but JR was. But I don't think it was that bad, or I see exactly what he was saying.
Let's talk a little bit about a name that we haven't talked a lot about in wrestling. The Indianapolis physician, Dr. Joel Hackett, who was a friend of Brian Pillman's and obviously prescribed him probably far too many pills. Same thing with Louis McCauley, Ahmed Johnson, lots of other guys, Del Wilkes. This became sort of a more modern day Zahorian, I guess. Mm-hmm. Zahorian is a name that most wrestling fans are familiar with. Was Hackett on your radar at any point? It's written in the Observer that even though the company had banned him from attending events, a lot of the boys would still get him comp tickets to come to the shows because he was helping them in other ways.
Well, we shut that down. So the boys, it wasn't all the boys. It was three or four guys, Conrad. It wasn't the boys.
Right.
It was the fucking roster. Okay. It was a few guys that had drug problems and they died. That was their penalty for fucking being ignorant. They died. They abused drugs and they fucking died because they didn't have enough goddamn sense to get off of it. And there's always this excuse. Oh, I'm hurt. I'm working every day. I'm on the road 300 days here. Then fucking take some time off. Oh, you can't do that because you lose your spot. If you lose your spot, you get no push. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy with some of these guys, man. There's always an excuse for an issue that is not their fault. They were only trying to make a living and quote unquote feed my family. I want to feed my family. Feeding your family, you shouldn't need a parade because you want to feed your family. It's our obligation as human beings to take care of our loved ones. Simple as that. That's why you should stay home during this goddamn virus. You think I like staying home by myself? Hell no. I could do a podcast every day if you wanted to because I got plenty of time. So I don't like some of those excuses over the years. Just got worn thin, and they're not even creative anymore. They're the same ones that have been repurposed. So a young wrestler hears this one about this guy. Oh, I'm going to use that one. It's crazy. So I think that the whole thing was it started a downward spiral of bad publicity, and we didn't need it and didn't want it. And a lot of us are working our ass off, Conrad. Really, I mean, I'm telling you, man. And to see. Don't have to learn it. Vince told me one time, JR, in this job, in this world, this business, in WWE, you got to learn you got to acquire the taste of shit. Because in this job and in our level, we are going to be compelled to eat a lot of shit. You're never going to like it. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm not asking you to even want to do it more. But you got to develop a little taste for it because you're going to be tasting it more often than you choose to.
I love that analogy. Let's keep it going. Let's talk about where the company is at the end of the quarter. So January 28th, the WWF had $243 million in cash assets. $172 million of that came from their IPO. Another $71 million came in accrued profits, since the company has been in operation. And, the biggest reason that we see an uptick in gross revenue from 65 million in 1999 to 98 million here as we head into 2000 is we've had a $12.1 million increase in television advertising revenue. Of course, that's because we've just launched SmackDown. We've also added a $5.8 million bonus in live event grosses. A lot of that is because they increased ticket prices by 20%, which we've recently covered up a minute ago. So now your average ticket price, this is worth mentioning, is $28. There's also a huge increase in licensed merchandise. We go from 18.9 million this time last year to 32.5 million. That's how hot the company is. They've also tripled their online revenue. Obviously, this is the early days of sort of e-commerce, but now there is a lot more of that coming in than ever before. The pre-tax profit for this last quarter is $25,857,000. After taxes, that's going to be $15,721,000 in net profit, which is 23 cents per share. The estimates were only 18 cents a share. So that means that stock price is going to start ticking up again. You've been in the wrestling business at this point for decades, Jim. There's never been a company this hot creating this much money ever in this space, right?
No, we were doing things that weren't heard of. We were doing things that led investors, that led the Wall Street to realize that this is not just grunt and groan. It's not a grunt and groan business. This is not the smoky old VFW hall. This is not that. This is a big time business. This is the NFL of its genre, and we worked our ass off to accomplish that. Like I said, I go over a lot of that stuff in the new book is out March 31st Under the Black Hat, simply because it's a very compelling story about the journey, and you keep running into roadblocks. Anybody that's a wrestling fan, Conrad, including yourself, have run into plenty of roadblocks about being a wrestling fan. And then somebody, have you ever been asked this question? Conrad, you do 5 podcasts a week and they're all about wrestling. Is there that much wrestling to really talk about? You ever had that question?
Of course.
What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. There's that much to talk about with sports news radio or political talk radio. I mean, what in the world is sports talk even doing right now on the air? Like you think we've still got wrestling to talk about now, but also back in the day. But Jim, I don't know if you've listened to any sports talk radio since everybody's been quarantined, but there's no sports. What is there to talk about?
I tried to listen the other day to Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman with some young lady, Joy Taylor maybe, and they shit all over her because they kept talking and talking over each other and louder and louder. And then they smile like they're in the 9th grade, like they just got one over on the teacher. It's ridiculous. Some of them don't even know how to do talk radio or talk television. You can't talk over each other like those guys did. It was horrible. But to your point, there's not a lot to talk about. They're begging that the damn draft goes on, the NFL draft. They're begging for somebody to trade somebody in football or sign a free agent contract. They need stories. They need leads. So, and maybe that's what will get WWE some extra publicity, because Rob Gronkowski, who's going to be the quote unquote host of, he needs to work on his entrance. That entrance when he got introduced on SmackDown the other day was a little carny-ish. It was a little eye-rolling, like I ain't going to watch this shit type thing. Somebody needs to help him. Don't let him produce himself. But nonetheless, I can guarantee you the talking heads in sports will pick up on Gronk doing something at WrestleMania, which is exactly what the WWE needs and wants: positive publicity from an outgoing, very charismatic character that's loved by a lot of people. Now he's not playing for the Pats; he's out there independently. He's a likable guy, and you can bet your ass. What's the over/under on how many spears he'll deliver at WrestleMania? That's the only thing he can do that he might not hurt himself on, is delivering a spear. The over/under on Gronk spears could be an interesting bet. And Vegas needs some. And Vegas, I started saying they needed some propositions, but hell, they're closed too.
Yeah, everybody's closed. And you talked a little bit about the media. Let's talk about how the Calgary Sun is reporting that the British Bulldog is in rehab, and that the company is paying $75,000 for it. Brett would be very critical of this, because this is something normally that's played close to the vest when one of the talent go to rehab. And Brett says, hey, he's only doing this because it's good PR. I would be curious to see if he would ever actually try to help a wrestler, if there was no PR spin to it. So Brett was critical and bitter in this era. Let's talk about Davey Boy. We know that ultimately he would pass away way, way too soon. He did leave a legacy with his son, who's been tearing it up in the more recent years. He's in rehab here, according to Dave Meltzer, for excessive use of painkillers, sleeping pills, morphine, and muscle relaxers. It feels like he was in a bad way here, to the point that apparently the company said, you've got to go to rehab or we've got to let you go. I assume that's you that has this call.
I was involved in it. Yeah, Vince did a nice job. Davey was one of the incumbents. Davey had been around for a long time, longer than myself. I got the WWE in '93, but I was involved in that situation. The Davey was, Davey was a very talented guy in the ring. We all know that he's a Hall of Fame guy, et cetera, et cetera. I thought he and the British Bulldog team were phenomenal. He and Dynamite Kid, Tommy Billington. I don't understand why Tommy Billington's not in the Hall of Fame. Why the Bulldogs aren't in the Hall of Fame together. That's where the greatest claim to fame was. Davey Boy Smith was a great athlete and a powerhouse, and could be, when he wanted to be, extraordinary. But I always believed that Davey's claim to fame came as a member of the British Bulldogs. They're one of my favorite teams. So I think both those guys should have gone to the Hall of Fame. But nonetheless, that's another story for another time. Maybe someday we should do a Hall of Fame show.
Yeah.
But anyway, Davey had issues. And here's the thing. Davey got a lot of chances. And I used Davey as an example one time to Vince about the roster. I said, it's admirable that you're trying to help Davey because you like him. He's mischievous, fun-loving, entertaining by and large to be around. But we can't continue to quote unquote repackage the Bulldog. And Vince pondered that a while and he thought about, well, you're right. I said, I totally agree. We're trying to help the guy. Helping him get away from the drug issues and that monkey on his back is a lot more important than him getting back in the ring for us. Saving his life would be a lot bigger deal to me than who he's going to be booked with next week on TV. And that's kind of like this virus shit. The games are not important right now. I mean, when they cancel the Olympics, can you imagine the billions of dollars that's costing the global economy for no Olympic Games? It's haunting. It's life-changing for a lot of ways. So that's why I say the dominoes are going to continue to fall economically in this crisis. And that's why we've all got to be smart, stay in, and don't try to contract it with anybody. Don't get around a lot of people. I did make an exception last night, but that's another story, and I think everything's cool.
Let's keep it going. Let's talk about your pal, Steve Austin. Meltzer would report he's wearing a soft neck collar most of the time, that his movement is limited to walking. He's not allowed to lift weights, of course. The hope was that he would be back at WrestleMania, but in a very limited role. Talk to me a little bit about what Steve was thinking, what was going through his mind. Obviously he's anxious to get back in there. You assume he's sort of self-quarantined here himself as a result of this neck surgery. What was his attitude at the time?
Leery, uncomfortable, worrisome. Everything to Steve was, he internalized a lot of things. And that's just, that also added to his intensity and his drive, which made him an amazing star, arguably the biggest ever in WWE. But I just think overall, kind of like we are now. If you sat in your house by yourself and you think, what does this virus mean? Where are we going? Well, the answers are really simple. We don't know.
Right.
And Steve, even though his neck surgery was successful, but he still had a litany of other injuries, football injuries, knee injuries, joint injuries. And sometimes guys that might use a little gas here, there, and yon, would get people understand your muscles get bigger, but your tendons don't. That's why there's all these quad tears and bicep tears and tricep tears, pecs, and all that stuff. Your tendons don't get stronger. They stay the same. It's what you're born with, your DNA. And so I just think that when you're in a high level, a junior college football player, a Division I football player, and a weightlifter, lifting heavy, then wrestling, taking bumps, hitting on your hips, your joints, your knees, it's a matter of time. It's not, well, you think I could have some lingering injuries? Well, yeah, you dumbass, you're going to have lingering injuries. This ain't, they get lingering injuries if you're on tennis. There may be bowlers out there that got lingering injuries. Hell, I don't know. But the bottom line is, yeah, you're gonna have lingering injuries. So he did not know what baggage he was bringing back into the game, nor how good he would be. And for Steve, if he could not be amazingly productive and make himself quasi happy with his own matches, then he wasn't going to do it. He didn't need the money, and he wasn't going to settle. And that's the mark of a great athlete. You just don't settle. That's why I think Tom Brady will do very well if he stays healthy, which I think is a big issue with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Brady gets hurt, and all those great dreams and all this wonderful riding off the sunset with a couple of Super Bowls or something is a fantasy. But I think that's the deal about what makes Brady great. He wills himself to be great, and he won't settle for anything less than amazing effort and preparation on his own self. And that's where Steve was.
Let's talk about the Ultimate Warrior. Vince McMahon's been out of action for a little bit. He's been in Phoenix for a jury trial in the Jim Hellwig lawsuit against himself and the company. They agreed to settle on March the 3rd. The terms of the settlement are kept confidential. The gist is it's unauthorized use of service marks and trademarks using the phrase "always believe" in merchandise, which Hellwig had.
Jesus.
Well, that tells me what I needed to know. What did Vince and the rest of the company think of it?
It's a nuisance suit. Hellwig needed the money. And that's it. I mean, to me, it's so out there. He needed the money because he didn't invest well, apparently. He didn't save well, apparently. And it was a payday. And I think, Ted Turner used to do the same thing. Turner got sued by all kinds of people over the years. And he rarely heard about it because he settled. He cut the deal. He cut, when you're offering cash to settle a thing right now, and you can negotiate, you'll have some leverage there in doing such, and a little bit of room to wiggle, as they say. But he settled everything. So did Ted. So I think Vince may have taken a page out of that book without, inadvertently. Let's just get this off the books. Let's move on. I got things to do. I'm busy. And this guy is going to be a pain in the ass as he is. That's why I was shocked when he came back right before his passing. Again, I said this before on the show. I'm not a big fan of the Ultimate Warrior. Never was. Never will be. Think he has a beautiful family, and I wish him nothing but the best. God bless them. To have to live with him and his craziness and his idiosyncrasies and now be alone, tough. It's a goddamn tough hand to be dealt. But he was not a good person in my estimation. In my opinion, Jim Hellwig was not a good person. And I think it's not the lawsuit that created that emotion in me. Other things, his lack of respect for different people. So it was just time away from work that Vince had to deal with that wasn't worth the hassle to win a lawsuit that was frivolous to start with.
Hey, does BlueChew work? If you're asking that question, we want you to know that BlueChew is putting their money where their mouth is by giving you a month free. BlueChew is an online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. The process is super simple too. You just sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part? Well, it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. BlueChew wants men rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code JR at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is JR to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast. Let's keep it going and talk about the USA deal. This is a big piece of news here. The WWF officially gives notice to the USA Network on March 1st that it's canceling its contract with them effective in September when the new TV season starts. Meltzer would write, "This isn't necessarily as big as it sounds, but most feel it is bigger The WWF deals for Raw, Livewire, and Superstars expired in September 2001, but the WWF has a right to get out of the deal in September of 2000 by giving the network 6 months notice, and then USA Network has the right to match any offer. The Heat contract expires in September of 2000, so they don't have to give any notice on that show. The gist is it allows them to officially begin shopping the cable package, and it appears that CBS Viacom is willing to make a big move here. We know how this winds up. It winds up with Raw going to TNN in 2000. Paul Heyman, in a notable promo, says that TNN gave Vince $100 million for it. Were you shocked that you guys eventually would leave USA, or that Vince would entertain it? It feels like USA has been here for the company from the very beginning.
Yeah, I was surprised. Remember, Conrad, when they tell you it's not about the money,
it's money.
All about the money, right?
Right.
All about the money. So, and the offer, I don't know if it's $100 million or not. You know, I love Paul Heyman. He's one of the brightest guys I've ever known in my life in any area, but he has been known to embellish from time to time and create narratives that may not exactly be accurate, but he may be right on this one. But it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money, and it was a difference making money. So it was all about the cash, but I was surprised about the move. I think the Viacom name had a whole lot more to do with it than Spike. Spike was still trying to find their foothold and find their audience, get the audience, that target demographic of 18 to 49 males, to find them. And I think that the WWE on their network was a great way to lead that defiant young male audience over to Spike. But the fact was that Spike was under the umbrella of the Viacom was a big thing, because that led you to CBS at some point in time. And I think that we could all realize the potential, I stress, that CBS could do something similar to what NBC did on Saturday Night's Main Event. So you had that big network monster in CBS network that may be able to do something with you at some point in time. And then they're offering you all this money, and you're not going to be preempted for the dog show or any of that bullshit. I think that was another issue. The fact that, that Spike was going to make sure that we were on every Monday night at the same time, same place. And that was important to Vince, because one of his pet peeves was always when we got preempted for the dog show.
Yeah.
It was always, and it was a pain in the ass. If you're doing episodic television and you miss a week, our fans are raising hell. And it's like the fans now that when they're watching their soap operas and they get preempted for a news deal on the virus or whatever, people get pissed off. They're sensitive about their programming and their routine. So I just think the money was the issue, and the fact that it got us a step closer to holding hands with Viacom a little bit more.
Let's talk about the restaurant in Times Square. Meltzer would report the WWF Times Square restaurant is expected to turn into a late night, early morning nightclub on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. It was pretty obvious to anyone who's been at the club of late. It was designed for this, but the club format is expected to debut within the next month. He would write that the place is usually packed on Mondays and Thursdays with people who are wanting to watch the TV show. He thinks the company already knew they had a built-in audience there, but that there are other times it's pretty weak. The merchandise store next door is booming. It's going to do 10 million in sales in its first year, but nobody's really coming to this thing late night and the other hours. So they want to turn it into a nightclub because the rent is so astronomical. And the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, has come out against this because the plan was for the WWF to open it up to 18-year-olds. So obviously that is a precarious spot. The illegal drinking age here in America at the time was 21 years, still is. But if you open it up to 18, they could come in and maybe they, mark their hands or something like that, so the bartenders know not to serve them. But it does open yourself up to some potential liability. And apparently Giuliani even warned the WWF that they're going to monitor them. And if the first sign of bad behavior, quote, we're going to bust you from A to Z and back again.
This is a guy that's had that ridiculous comb over that started right about a half an inch above his ear. that if it had blown off the other way to put somebody's eyes out, number one. Number two, he had this propensity for cross-dressing, I hear. Saw some pictures of it. And he's the leader. He's got connections. I mean, he's, my late wife, God bless her, being Italian, she gets it. He had a vowel ending his name. He had connections. And so, but he liked to exercise his muscle. Maybe somebody got that. Maybe somebody else had plans for that venue. The thing about the restaurant that I thought it had a lot of potential and a decent idea. But anytime from losing money and going out of business in a restaurant, I can tell you that the key to running a restaurant is who's in the house, who's in the front of the house managing, and who do you have in the back of the house cooking. It's two things, and you got to have both in place. And I thought the food there at the restaurant was excellent. But the guy that got busted for embezzling money, that was the leader over there. The guy that was leading your army of this massive investment was a crook. So you're dead in the water from the get-go.
Let's talk about something else that's dead in the water. WCW. Are you keeping tabs on them in this era? Obviously, the Monday Night Wars, while still technically a thing, they've been gone and over for a long time. The WWF clearly in control. WCW's business is down every single month. I think Tony has called it a coffin on roller skates. In April, Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo are put in charge of WCW. Did you think that had any chance of working? At this point, you hadn't spent very much time working with Eric, very briefly in WCW, but you'd been around Russo. How did you think that pairing would work?
I was curious to see how it was going to work because both two very strong personalities, and I didn't know who had the last word. I never really followed the minute by minute activity of Nitro. I would watch it if the replay was on in my hotel when we got back from doing Live Raw. If we weren't going on to the next town to do SmackDown the next day, or going back to Stanford to work the next day in the office, I would catch it on the replay. But then you're going to fall asleep because it starts at midnight or wherever it was, and over at 2 a.m. We had guys on the crew that certainly watched it. I watched all of it every week. I wasn't one of those guys. I was tired. I had things to do. And quite frankly, it wasn't, sometimes it was compelling, sometimes it wasn't, but did it really matter? Subjective anyway. So I never really understood how that chain of command was going to be, but I was dubious based on what I knew on how that was going to materialize. But, if they were both on the same page, you got two very creative guys in Russo and Bischoff, two very bright guys in their own way, their own unique ways. But they seem like their philosophies were a little bit 180 of each other. I might be wrong on that, by the way. But I was curious how it's going to work out. It didn't send at the time, it did not send a chill up anybody's spine in Stanford.
Let's talk about WrestleMania. We're finally here. We're going to kick the show off with Lillian Garcia singing the Star Spangled Banner. What'd you think? Lillian's singing chops here.
Lillian does great every time. Lillian's most significant contribution to my memory was when she sang on September the 13th in Houston. That presentation was as impactful to me in my life of the national anthem as Whitney Houston at the Super Bowl that year. It was historic. Could not have been better. And she was fighting back tears. Just tremendous performance. Lillian does a good job. She's got her podcast and living out there in California. Nice lady, no doubt about it. And but to say she was anything less than spectacular would be erroneous.
Why do you think Vince loved America the Beautiful? I just called it the Star Spangled Banner, but more WrestleManias than not, it's America the Beautiful. And I don't know, that just is it just his way of being different?
No, I think it's his way of being less political. Some people don't want to hear the national anthem. Some people don't want to hear the national anthem in London or someplace else. But America the Beautiful is a not that. It's a ballad. I get it. I understand. And maybe it's a too fine a line I'm cutting here. But I think I remember some dialogue about it that it was advised by some in the political correctness world that singing the national anthem might not be the thing to do for all people. My God, Conrad, we've seen it in football. We've seen it in football. Remember this guy, Colin Kaepernick?
Well, but I'm talking about 1987, WrestleMania 3, before you're even there. He's still singing way before political correctness. I think he maybe just prefers the song. Maybe he wanted to be different.
That's it. It's weird. Maybe that's it. Simple as that.
Let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about the matches. Our first one is Boss Man and Bull Buchanan. They're going to get a win over Godfather and D'Lo Brown. 9 minutes and 5 seconds. It's, this is a star-studded event. Vince is always going to rely on celebrity whenever he can. He has Ice-T come out and do a new rap intro for Godfather. I'm not going to say it's necessarily to mine or your liking, but Ice-T's a big star. This match, on the other hand, doesn't get a big star. It gets a quarter star. I guess we had to start somewhere, but this one did not mesh for me. What'd you think?
Same feeling. It was just a match. It was cold. No push. There's that word again. Oh my boy. It was opener match. I mean, if in today's world, it would have been on the pre-show, right?
Right.
But it got four guys that worked their ass off a payday, and that is the theme of this pay-per-view.
Let's talk about the next show. This is an interesting one. It's the hardcore title. This feels like we're definitely in a time capsule. When it's all over, Bob Holly's holding it, but who knows how long he will, because inside of 15 minutes, the belt changes hands 10 times. It's a 13-man free for all with Crash Holly, Taz, Viscera, Rodney, Pete Gas, Joey Abs, Taka Michinoku, Sho Funaki, the Headbangers, and the Acolytes. Yeah, I just don't assume this is your favorite match. It was not Dave Meltzer's. He only gave it half a star. There is some glass here. Some of the glass even gets shot into Taz's eye. He doesn't get, cut on the eyeball, but still he winds up having have a piece, taken out after the match. What'd you think of the match? What'd you think of the hardcore title? Is this just another way to get, hey, these guys don't have anything to do. Let's throw them in the hardcore match.
It's a battle royal disguised as a multiple person hardcore match. It was a cluster, to say the least. It filled some time. It meant nothing. The hardcore title meant nothing. When you have 13 or whatever you said title changes in a 15-minute period, really? You're going to take that seriously? No, you're not. It's comedy. It's levity. It's lightheartedness. And that's all that was. But it was 15 minutes of your life you can't get back.
Let's talk briefly about the finish. This is something that has become a little viral in more recent years. According to Bob Holly, the referee, Mr. White, was
Jimmy White. Yeah, good guy.
He's been counted down in his earpiece by somebody backstage, so he would know how to time the count, ensuring that he wouldn't hit the mat for the 3 count before the bell sounds. If you see the match, something goes awry, because Tim White holds back on counting with a full second left, and hastily improvising, a confused Howard Finkel announces that Hardcore Holly has won the match and the belt. And later, I guess it's revealed that Tim White is yelled at by all the agents, including Vince McMahon himself, for the snafu. And Bob says that White was at the mercy of the person counting him down and did exactly what he was supposed to do. What'd you think of the schmoz finish here?
I felt bad for Timmy White, one of the hardest working, most loyal WWF guys that I've ever met, and all the agents. Okay, I got an idea for you agents. Go fuck yourself. How's that? You goddamn, you're hanging around anyway. The most goddamn impressive thing some of those agents in those early days did was go to catering. Come on. yelled Timmy White's ass. He's done everybody favors. He's driven people. He took care of Andre forever. And that's a guy, he ought to get a Medal of Honor for that. So I thought it was bullshit. Howard. Well, the winner is, I'm somewhat confused. Howard, bless his heart. So he just did, everybody did with their job. Why would you have a confusing ending to a nothing happening match? Why can't someone just go over and win the game? Herm Edwards said, we play to win the game. Win the game and move on and get your stinking ass 15-man hardcore match to the back. Go take a shower. See you later at the party.
Let's talk about the next match. It's Test and Albert taking on Al Snow and Steve Blackman. Meltzer would say no heat. This one was so bad that even Jim Ross, about 4 minutes in, started with his code words about how the teams were having a style clash and even doing the dreaded bowling shoe reference, which means
dreaded. I'm campy, and I'm going to my what did he say? I was going into my code words.
Well, okay. He said whenever you break out the bowling shoe, it means you know that the match or the segment is in the toilet. Yeah, kind of ugly. It was ugly, and the saving grace of that match was Trish Stratus. Hey, she could just stand around and watch me and you bathe each other, and it'd be entertaining. Nobody'd look at us. Wait a minute. That's a bad visual. That's all right. It's really clear Stratus needed to be sent to Memphis or Ohio Valley for a few months, and she's not ready for Broadway. Test would pin Blackman with an elbow off the top, and then afterwards they bring the cheese guy in, and Al Snow and Blackman beat him up to get their heat back, he writes. But in this case, get your heat back. See how important that is, Conrad? A nothing happening match that was just a match, and we got to book it to make sure that everybody is even. We got a team that wins. Then we got the other team gets their heat back against a goof, Cheesy McCheeser, whatever his name was. TNA versus Head Cheese, -1.25. Did you ever think when you first started calling wrestling that you would call a match between TNA and Head Cheese? No, that was another great example of what kind of content falls under the heading of entertainment in the sports entertainment vernacular. It was horrible. And look, Trish was brought up early because we knew she was going to be a star. And I knew she was going to be a star from the first day she walked in my office for an interview. It wasn't hard to figure out. I had good eyesight, and she was extremely articulate, very intelligent, as evidenced by her entrepreneurial abilities nowadays. But we knew she was going to be a star. But going down to OVW or whatever, not a bad idea. But it wasn't like she got ready to wrestle, but it was just at that, her role then was to get her on television, create a little buzz for her, who is this very beautiful woman from Toronto. So I don't know. I don't quite agree with Dave on that. But if she was she was in the match wrestling, I might have a different opinion. But being the second or the valet, whatever the hell you want to call them, I thought she did just fine. And quite frankly, she added something fresh and new to to WrestleMania. And I'm thinking, Conrad, did you mention earlier that was her first WrestleMania too? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, it's this show we're talking about right now may not have been the most artistic success that we've seen at WrestleManias. However, its place in history, because it facilitated the introduction of so many greats, is pretty impressive when you go back and look at it as we're doing right now. Let's talk about the next match. It's Edge and Christian winning the WWF tag team titles in a 3-way ladder match over Matt and Jeff Hardy and the Dudley Boys. They get plenty of time, 22 minutes and 29 seconds. This isn't maybe the most famous one, which happened at WrestleMania 17, but still a 4-star spectacle. Meltzer would say, although this featured every bit of the effort of the previous Christian and Edge and Hardy's ladder match, the spots seemed too set up, and it came across as a tremendous stunt show that never had the intensity of a match. The crowd didn't even want to see a match. Once they saw the ladders and tables started, fans were chanting for tables from the start. Let's talk about it. This is, I don't even know how to describe this. A car crash, but goddamn, it's entertaining. I feel bad for the guys. Now as an adult, I look at this and say, man, some of that's unnecessary. I wish they were doing that. But as a kid, Dude, this was a fucking badass spectacle, was it not?
Yeah, great match. You know, I've never called a match with those three teams involved and against each other teams that wasn't decent and oftentimes spectacular. When you put these three teams together, we always got amazing results. They basically book their own match, much like AEW stars do now. They book their own stuff. By and large, they have help. You know, you got the Malenkos and the Cherry Lynn's, those guys that coach you through. But you're allowed to have your own ideas. You're allowed to call an audible. You're allowed to call your own plays. And in these matches here, because of the drastic nature and the extreme nature of what was going on, you sure as hell wanted to make sure that your talents were not being forced to do something that they felt obligated to do because, for God's sakes, they don't want to lose your push. They don't want to be seen as, uncooperative. So I'm not surprised this match wasn't good. Was good. Look, this match was a good illustration, Conrad, of how somewhat tepid the Anaheim crowd was. Yeah, I realized it was a Sunday afternoon based on the time difference, 4:00 start, I'm assuming. Maybe that has something to do with it, but the audience they were not in it. They're not with it. And so I've always looked at it this way. I never blame the wrestling fans for being a bad audience. I blame us for not providing the product in the ring that's going to stimulate their investment. And we didn't. This card, again, it had no focus. It was WrestleMania. And I think in 2000, just saying it's WrestleMania wasn't enough. Now, as evidenced by how things are going for WWE now, WrestleMania is, the WrestleMania is it. WrestleMania is the star of this event because who else is a star? I mean, there's a lot of good talent, but you follow me in my line of thought here on this deal?
Yeah.
It was a collaborative effort. As we said earlier, and I don't think that's what you do when you have your biggest show of the year. You know, you get feature two guys. I don't even want to see tag teams close at WrestleMania. I want to see a single match, whether it be male or female. Doesn't matter to me, not one iota. But if you don't, I think you're screwing up.
It's fascinating to hear your thought process on that. Why do you think the singles match even over a tag?
Well, you don't split your focus. You can devote all your time to two entities that you want people to invest in. You want them to invest in these two people, their personas, personalities, the presentation, and the story. And the stories are more pointed. They're more easily understood and processed between two than they are 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever it may be. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there, Conrad, on that. That's my logic on it anyway. And fans, I'd be interested to hear. They hit me on Twitter at JRSBBQ. Let me know your thoughts on this thing. You know, I'm not saying JR is always right. I'm always honest. But I prefer, as a fan and as somebody that's a professional in the business, to see the closing match at a major pay-per-view be a singles match. And I believe if you ask most of the talent or all the talent you could poll, they would say the same thing.
Let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about the next match. It's Terri and the Cat. 2 minutes and 25 seconds. The object is to throw your opponent out of the ring. Meltzer would say it's a TNA spectacle that delivered Terri in a flesh-covered G-string after the match. Moolah and Mae Young were at ringside. Val Venus is your referee. Ross said ahead of time the match shouldn't be rated on the star system. It's one of those deals.
That's inside talk, Conrad. That's cool. Inside stuff. That's cult, inside, and campy. So just go ahead.
What'd you think? Cat's going to pants Terri after -1 star. Believe it or not, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, this is the only singles match on the whole card, Terri and Cat. How about that?
Case closed, Your Honor. I rest my case. Get my point now? Well, look, it's set up to be comedy, and it was. You got two ladies that were not highly trained to wrestle. They had two of the oldest people on earth at ringside, and Moolah and Mae. So I don't know how much more you got out of it. I mean, thank God it went 2 minutes and change. But it was the old, I hate this saying sometimes, I do it too much myself. It was what it was. It was what we thought it was going to be. I feel like Dennis Green now. They are who we thought they were. So it was who we thought it was going to be. I listened back to it, and did you notice that in this match, and folks go back and listen to it, Lawler had more enthusiasm in this match than any match on the card. Now, obviously his wife was involved in Kat, but don't let that fool you. He loved to watch the ladies do their thing and the little, they're tired and all that stuff. So he had more enthusiasm in that match than anything on the card. But nonetheless, hey, the girls worked hard. Hopefully they got a nice payday over the years. They probably think we screwed them, but nonetheless, who doesn't?
Let's get to the next match. Too Cool and China on one side, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Eddie Guerrero on the other. Meltzer would say it's a better than average match. The focus was put on China and Guerrero. All the Radicals had to sell for some of the lame looking offense by China. China did an impressive handspring elbow into the corner on Malenko and another on Saturn, and then a double low blow spot. And while doing this, she ripped her pants down the side and they started falling. The poor woman was having to reverse a power bomb into a power bomb of her own while having to keep her pants from falling down. So it wasn't a very smooth power bomb, and they went right to the finish. When China went for the press slam, although Guerrero didn't get himself high enough to make the move work, and a reverse DDT like move for the pin. 2.5 stars. A little, especially in this era, I guess this makes sense. Costume malfunction, a wardrobe malfunction. 2.5 stars. You got some all-star talent in there, and Perry Saturn and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, of course, a real Hall of Famer in China. Too Cool. We're white hot at this time. There's a lot of talent, and I think it probably exceeded expectations because everybody had to wonder, how are we going to do this with China?
Yeah, good question. I still ask myself that today. How do we pull that off? I didn't like the booking. Didn't like intergender matches. Still don't like them. And so, yeah, I'm old school, guys. I really am. It's not believable in the most senses. It's not believable that a woman can give up significant strength and size, etc., and be competitive in the showbiz world of pro wrestling. It's too big a stretch for me to get there. I can't buy into it. I can't. I had a lot of talks with Joni, AKA China, about that. She didn't want to be, she didn't want to wrestle women because she said it makes me look weak.
Right.
You want to say, Joni, you're a woman.
Right.
Unless you're going to grow testicles, you're always going to be a woman. So, come on. I just didn't like the booking. Look, I had so much respect for everybody in there, but damn, man, you got Eddie Guerrero bumping around for China. Are you shitting me? If that's not a good enough reason why this particular intergender match was not copacetic with me, then I don't have a better answer for you. Eddie Guerrero having to sell for China was unrealistic and unbelievable. But the one thing it proved is that the Radical guys were team players. They were pros that did what they were asked to do, because there's not anybody in that match that would tell you that this is their first choice of wrestling at WrestleMania and wrestling in an intergender matchup.
Right.
No way in hell. So, again, good folks. I remember, I can vaguely remember the match, but I never signed off personally as a fan of that work. I just never did, and I think that was proven out in that deal. Again, my bottom line, to get off of it, China bouncing Eddie settling for China is all the reason I need to tell you and the audience. You got to agree with me, folks. JR's going to be honest. I might not be right. I'll give you my opinion. It just wasn't realistic to me, and I thought it was just unnecessary booking. We could have done something else with those guys, but we didn't, and there it was. It got Eddie and China. When Eddie and China got together later on, I liked that pairing a lot, but not when they're wrestling each other. Just didn't make sense to me.
Let's get going to the next match. This is an interesting one that I know you're not going to think makes sense. You've got two titles on the line here. Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle. It's a 3-way match. Kurt Angle is both the Intercontinental and the European champ, but it's not, it's a unique situation. Whoever wins the first fall wins the European belt, and whoever wins the second fall wins the Intercontinental title. Or maybe I have that backwards. Either way, both belts on the line. How do you do this logically?
You don't. It was a gimmick match with pulling stipulations out of our ass. Oh, my ass. I pulled a stipulation out of my ass one time, and I called it Connie. I think that it was a pull your stipulation out of your ass match, in the sense that we had so many multiple participant matches, and they all started to look alike. That's why the Dudleys and all those cats and those ladders and tables and chairs, oh my, was so unique and stood out because it had something in it nobody else had. And in this match, we had the same thing. You have 2 titles on the line in one match with 3 people. So that was unique to that card. But it was a desperate attempt to grab some uniqueness for this multiple person match. I can only tell you how good that match with Benoit, Jericho, and Kurt could have been if the convolution of the first fall, the second, it was a 2-fall match, 2-fall deal. It was hard to explain. As a broadcaster, when you have to continue to explain the rules or the stipulations over and over again, it's not a good stipulation. They should be easy to explain and easy to understand. Well, the first fall, who wins the first fall is the year, well, give me a break. So, but think of those 3 guys, Conrad. Think of those 3 guys in a regular 3-way match for one title, one singular focus in that regard, so the fans can bear into that. Because look, the European title didn't mean anything. It never meant anything. It was never going to mean anything, period. End of story. The money, if there was any on those titles, was the Intercontinental title.
Yeah.
That would have been your match. Those 3 guys with that skill set, and the way these 3 ways are, the champion doesn't have a championship advantage. The champion, it doesn't matter who's the champion going in because the title's up. First man to score pin or submission wins it. So it doesn't make a shit who's the champion, because once the bell rings, all bets are off. So that could have been an amazing match for one title, but that was not the way that it was. But it was only booked that way to make it different from the other multiple people matches on the same card.
And probably to protect Kurt Angle, because with the first fall, Benoit beats Jericho for the IC title. And again, remember, Kurt Angle's champ, but Benoit pinned Jericho, so now he's the champ, whatever. And then fast forward, sort of the same deal. Jericho gets a pin on Benoit, so now he is the European champion. So he got revenge for the match he just lost. They're both champions. Kurt Angle didn't take a pin in either case, and he is left beltless. So I guess this is Benoit's the first man to win the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania since Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, WrestleMania 8. Yeah, I think that's right.
That's right.
Let's keep going to the next match. We got Kane and Rikishi Fatu taking on Road Dogg and X-Pac. Meltzer would say this match was basically rushed. I guess so they could hurry up and do their Pete Rose joke. Pretty much before building to anything, Rikishi rubbed his butt in Tori's face, and Kane pinned X-Pac after a tombstone. After the match, of course, the chicken, the same gimmick that Pete Rose used the year before, got in the ring, is dancing with Too Cool. Kane goes after the chicken, making sure he doesn't interrupt the dance number. He's about to choke slam him when Pete Rose shows up with a baseball bat. Rikishi stops him, grabs the bat. Kane choke slams him. And then of course, Rikishi rubs his butt near the vicinity of Pete Rose's face, I guess. So the Pete Rose fun continues. I guess that's why this match even exists in the first place, huh?
Yeah. And Pete had a big bet on the game. And so he, hey, Pete Rose should be at the Baseball Hall of Fame, by the way. Just throw that in there. That's my opinion. And I don't know why he said that, but I believe in it. Pete always was a good sport. And hey, look, for a son of a bitch that had never been turned upside down, to put your head between somebody's legs and get tombstoned, takes balls, big baseballs, with stitching and leather, horsehide, big ones. And this guy had no fear, and he enjoyed having a good time. And what he really enjoyed were those paydays. And I don't know, I may be wrong on this, but it sure makes a good story. I believe we paid him in cash.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think so. One of them we did. I think one of them we did, because I think he wanted to go somewhere, and he go somewhere, meaning a casino.
Sure.
I had to go back and do some research on that. But somewhere along the way, I think he got his payday that day in cash, and he did good. You know, he probably made 25 grand.
I got to ask about X-Pac. I think he did an interview with you once where he says he's turned down a match on this show with Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental title because he wanted to finish his feud with Kane. Do you recall that? I mean, I understand wanting to work with your buddy that you've been working with a long time on a big show, but an Intercontinental title match at WrestleMania feels like that'd be a dream come true for Waltman.
You think so? But, you know, again, old school guy. Was involved in the storyline, wanted to finish it out. And quite frankly, even though the match with Jericho and X-Pac would have been phenomenal, it was a cold match by and large. So I think he made the right call. Finished the story out that he was already invested in, and they already had time in. And Sean's a unique guy that way. He's a real solid pro that wants to finish his business before starting something new. And he's one of the few guys that have the balls to say something like that. And a lot of guys would not. They just accept the booking and move on instead of, you know, it's not that you question all the decisions. It's not you have to internally and just continue to ask why. It's because it's the right thing to do. But some guys are so intimidated, so insecure that they won't say a word. As my daddy would say, they won't say shit with a mouthful. And that's kind of where this was. Sean Waltman didn't have that issue. At a certain point in time, he was able to eat at the grown-up table and able to express his opinion, of which I always appreciated and enjoyed. He's a smart guy. He should be helping somebody write TV or helping train talents. He should be doing something along those lines because he's that good at what he does. And I got a lot of time for Sean Waltman.
Let's get going. It's our main event. We should set the stage. At the Royal Rumble, The Rock wins the Rumble match to become the number one contender for the world title at WrestleMania by last eliminating Big Show. Of course, Triple H defeated Cactus Jack in a street fight to retain the world title. Then at No Way Out, Big Show would defeat The Rock to get a title shot at WrestleMania. Also at that event, Triple H beat Foley in the Hell in a Cell match, which means Mick has to retire. On the March 13th Raw, The Rock wins back his title shot, defeating Big Show with a little help from a returning Vince McMahon, and that got him into the match with Triple H for the world title. The following week, Triple H retained his title against both The Rock and Big Show, but now Linda McMahon adds Mick Foley to the match. So we've got a four-way with a McMahon in every corner, and that's the way it was marketed. These guys had a ton of time. 36 minutes and 28 seconds. And believe it or not, Hunter Hearst Helmsley retains the belt over Mick Foley, The Rock, and Big Show. I don't know, pretty anticlimactic main event for me. And you've got a lot of star power in there. I don't know if it's a McMahon in every corner that turns me off and thinks, why is that necessary? I realize it's a major curveball for Austin not to be there. It is weird that Undertaker's not there, but what'd you think of the main event?
Well, you got 8 big time personalities out there in the WWE world. The 4 McMahons and the 4 talents, the 4 wrestlers. But you got 8 people to keep your eye on, to focus on, to shoot, to talk about, to feature, etc. Again, I challenge any fan. And look, there'll be some, oh, I could do it. It doesn't bother me. Okay, good for you. Good for you, Scooter. Just too much going on. It's like saying the Royal Rumble, when they booked the Royal Rumble, they booked the Royal Rumble in quadrants. So you'll have 4, 5, 6 guys, whatever it may be, and then you have a break, then you rebuild it, and have a break, and rebuild it, and then you get to your finish at the end of the night. But there's a process to the damn thing. Battle royals in general have no process until you get down to the last 2 or 3 people, and we bastardized that so much. The dang that 1 foot, the Shawn Michaels move, that's worn out now. It's good occasionally, but it's every match. So I just felt like it was hard to follow, and you can see definitively where everybody gets a rub, where everybody gets some of their shit in, and I guess I don't have a problem with that. But it becomes obligatory, and then therefore, if it becomes obligatory, it becomes somewhat predictable and normal practice of business. I didn't like it. And again, like I said earlier today, when we started talking about this show, there's no reason with this amount of talent on this card that this should not have been a blowaway pay-per-view. And so you get to the last match, and by the way, it's smart. I thought the lineup of matches was pretty smart. Pete Rose, a little comedy segment, comedy ending for that tag match was what it was. Nice little break there before you get to the serious business of the world title. But man, Conrad, there's just too many people out there. There's too much focus. It's split focus. And I'm a big believer that there's only so much information a wrestling fan or a football fan or a political fan or whatever you're a fan of, so much of your information that you can process. And some younger guys will say, well, I can't get enough. I can think of that in other terms, but I can't get enough of this product is a fleeting art. So I'm just saying it just too much. And who do you focus on? And it just the build up to it, even though the booking building up to it was okay, but it's sure like we were really trying hard in those 2 to 3 weeks prior to WrestleMania to make sure we had at least a working reason for 4 guys to be in this match, and then all the McMahons there, all that stuff. It looked good on paper. It looked good on a poster, perhaps, and I think it did, as a matter of fact, actually. But the process of it and processing what you saw was not good. And when you have a match like that that's got so many moving parts, it's hard to watch them all. It's hard to invest in all of them. You can't do it. And then you have the heel going over. I don't know. It just didn't seem right to me. I don't know. I went back and watched it again. I'm thinking, these guys worked their ass off. They really did. But man, they were really swimming upstream. It's upstream or upstream, either one, to me.
We get a little bit of blood in the match from Vince McMahon, and we get a big people's elbow on Stephanie McMahon. But there's a lot of talk that this wasn't the original plan. Jericho has said that he was originally supposed to be in this match. You can even go back and find his image on some of the early promotional materials. And allegedly, Vince wasn't overly sold on Jericho as the top guy. So he winds up being replaced by Mick Foley. And I guess that explains why Foley lost a retirement match and then comes back. Allegedly, Foley even told his wife, don't be surprised if the match sucks and I don't sell a lot. Apparently he wasn't getting along with The Rock and didn't really want to come back, but felt like he had an obligation to the company too. Talk to me about, how Chris Jericho was maybe not Vince McMahon's favorite in this era, why they went another direction, and whether or not Foley regretted it.
Well, I would say that it comes back to the same thing. And Vince we talked about Chris. Vince always thought that, he was not sold on Chris as I was. There's a big part of my book, Under the Black Hat, that we talk about signing Jericho and write about it and the recruiting of it and negotiating with Vince. I had to negotiate with Vince basically to get Chris on the radar because of his fucking height. And that was it. I mean, you can't look at Jericho and say, if you look at McMahon, think about realistic, Conrad. You're a smart man, much smarter than I. But what would you dislike? What would you check? What would be your bad box check marks with Chris Jericho? He can't work? No, he's a real good worker. Oh, he can't talk, can he? Well, he's a real good talker. Is he injury free? No, he hasn't been injured. He's about as durable as anybody we've ever hired. So what is it? His blue eyes? The fact he's from Winnipeg? The fact he survived the Tony Condello death tour at one time? No, he's short. In Vince's eyes, short. That's where Jericho wore lifts in his shoes in those early days in WWE. So he had to get another inch or two. Boy, that could lead to another story. But nonetheless, that's it. What else could there be? I mean, he wasn't hard to get along with. He worked his ass off. He was talented. He was highly skilled, great skill set. He was not the ideal height to be in a main event at WrestleMania in Vince's view. And the way it works there, Conrad, is you know as well as anybody. Your sister-in-law is a big star there. The world revolves around Vince. It's not about anybody else. He didn't like Chris's height, and therefore he was able to. He made a change, and it was not a good change. I love Mick Foley. I hired Mick Foley. I went to the wall for Mick Foley more than one time. Don't have any regrets. But Mick retiring for 30 days or 60 days, where it was not good business for anybody.
Right.
And so, and not giving Jericho the opportunity to be in that match because he would stand out as being very short to Big Show and Rock, who's 6'4", Hunter 6'4", Big Show 7 feet, and Jericho 5'10". Oops. So that's where that came about. That's all it was. Could have been anything else. What else could it have been? There's nothing else.
What'd you think of the belt not changing hands here? There was a bit of a departure, and I guess it's worth mentioning too. This is a heel Triple H here, so you've got bad guy Triple H winning. When you go back as far as I can remember in WrestleMania, that was not the case. You know, even with Diesel, Shawn Michaels at 11, the babyface wins. At 12, Shawn was a babyface. At 13, The Undertaker was a babyface. At 14, Austin. At 15, Austin again. Here, the heel retains. It's a unique thing in the WrestleMania formula here to have a bad guy retain the belt. Typically, it feels like it would be a time to sort of crown a new guy or a babyface hero. But with Foley being a bit of the hokey pokey with his retirement piece, and we know that wasn't the original plan. Do you think the original plan would have been, let's go with Jericho here, and then Vince got cold feet?
Yeah. We had a lot of guys who could have fit in that match. They were lost in our casting, our booking on the show. But there are a lot of talents that could have fit very nicely into that final matchup. And Jericho, I couldn't think of anybody any better. But I think that the whole deal is just the size, his height was an issue, and how it was going to look in the ring compared to all those other big guys, tall guys. So, Jericho obviously ended up, doing good there, right? Yeah. I mean, he made millions of dollars, and he's doing the same thing now for AEW. He continues to reinvent himself. Do you think that the smarter guy as Chris Jericho is, as highly skilled as he was, would not have found a way for him to make that 4-way better? Of course he would have. That's what a pro does. But and his heart would have been in it. I'm not sure that Mick's heart was in that process. He had been bounced around creatively, fell from grace, back in, back out, retired, unretired. I don't know that his head was totally into the match going in. I'm not saying anything that would even resemble, well, Mick phoned it in that night. He sure as hell did not. He took some stupid bumps, puts himself at risk time and time and time again, continued to try to dodge that bullet, that one big old bullet that's going to eventually nail him. He loved that. I think he loved it. He seemed to be excited about participating in an event where his career is threatened so many times. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Go back and watch that match. He took a bump with his knees into the steel steps. That you would never approve anybody doing. You would never suggest they do it, but that was him. But I just don't think the build-up going into the match until the bell rung was exactly was on the top of Mick's list. He just didn't seem to have his heart into the situation at that point in time. And the only reason I'm saying that is because we're talking about Chris Jericho. Jericho would have had, he looked at this as a different opportunity than Mick perhaps, and Jericho had not had all the starts and stops that Mick had, because you're talking about Mick being a former champion, WWE champion.
Sure. So,
and he all of a sudden he's an afterthought. He's the fourth guy thrown into a four-way coming out of retirement which meant nothing. Mick coming out of retirement the next year at WrestleMania would have been a great deal. But instead, everybody got in a hurry and started doubting the system. The system was right. The system was right to hire Chris Jericho. He's proven that now every single day since.
It's amazing to think that, the original plan would have been Jericho becoming world champion at 16, and what that could have looked like for the rest of 2000 on into 2001. Of course, we know his day is going to come. Vengeance 2001, he would beat not only The Rock, but Steve Austin to become the undisputed champion and then headline WrestleMania 18. But that's a story for another day. We hope you guys enjoyed WrestleMania. We're looking forward to a weird WrestleMania this weekend. Such weird times, a unique time to be a wrestling fan. We should also mention that earlier today, if you supported us on our new super Patreon at adfreeshows.com, you got a bonus episode about one of our more requested topics. The plane ride from hell with myself and Jim Ross. When you go to adfreeshows.com, you'll be able to get our shows early and ad free. You'll have a copy of the notes and the research that we do for the show, lots of behind the scenes stuff and some extra bonus content. And to get you started this week, we've got the plane ride from hell. So check it out now, adfreeshows.com, and stay tuned next week, man. We've got something fun coming your way. We're going to keep the theme going. We've had a lot of fun with WrestleMania, but it wasn't always about WrestleMania. Next week, we're doing Clash of the Champions 6. And this is one of the more famous ones. It's head to head with WrestleMania, of course, but it's Ric Flair and it's the Nature Boy taking on the Ricky the Dragon, and they're battling for the NWA world title right there in the Superdome. That's got to be a show you remember quite well.
Yeah. Mixed reviews because we were told not to promote the event on television as a live event. So we never mentioned New Orleans or tried to sell tickets to the very, very last week. And that largely got George Scott fired as the booker, cause he wanted to draw a TV audience. Anyway, bottom line is that it has mixed reviews. I think I worked that show with Terry Funk.
Well, you worked it with Michael Hayes as well.
Oh, did I really?
Hayes is involved in this, helping you do commentary. You guys used to work together back with Watson, and he's popping up here. It's an interesting card. Samoan SWAT Team and Midnight Express, Great Muta and Steve Casey, JYD and Butch Reed, Bob Orton and Dick Murdoch, the Varsity Club and the Road Warriors, Ranger Ross, who rappels down from the fucking ceiling against the Iron Sheik, Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner with Missy Hyatt taking on the Varsity Club, Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair, 2 out of 3 falls match for the NWA world title. They get plenty of time. It's one of my low-key favorite matches. Lots of submissions, lots of map-based stuff. Really, really enjoyable. It's a fun time capsule from 1989. So stay tuned next week. Clash of the Champions 6. And as you heard JR mention, the book is out. It's available everywhere you can enjoy books now. But of course, that means for most of us, Amazon.com, or do what I did and go to jrsbbq.com. Not only can you get some great sauce and all the other stuff, because Jim's still shipping product. Most importantly, you can get this new book, Under the Black Hat, and you can get it personalized. And as long as you're a part of the lower 48, you've got a great deal. You get it autographed, you get a bookmark, free shipping. How do you beat that, Jim?
Can't beat it, man. It's like a sore pee-pee. Can't beat it. Just can't, or don't want to. It's doing great. The orders at jrsbbq.com, jrsbbq.com are great. That's where you get the personalized thing. And, you tell us what you want us to write and I'll take care of it. So, but it's doing well. It's at Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, wherever they sell books, Amazon, of course. And as Conrad mentioned so nicely, our website as well. It's very competitive with all the big boys on Amazon, and we're vying to be a New York Times bestseller. We're really working hard with Simon & Schuster on that deal. So, and to me, that's a big win for wrestling. Anytime a pro wrestling book or a book about a pro wrestling personality is doing as well as our book is in the advanced stages, it means that there's a great interest in our brand and the product and the genre. And I think at the end of the day, the book's going to be, as Conrad's talked about so nicely, because he read it, it was the fact that, we come out whole at the end of the day. I love the business. You'll see that in this book, but you'll also see how sometimes the business, in my view, and I might be wrong, did not love me back. Poor me. But it's compelling as hell. And I know Chandler here, she would approve because it's very honest. And man, the role that she played in my life when I was having issues with Ambien and Crown Royal and Xanax, all that shit was eating me alive because I was afraid to show weakness. And it's not a Vince McMahon deal. It was for him too. The guy that influenced that decision and that mindset in my life, Conrad, was my old man. Man, don't you cry. He'd knock the shit out of me. Don't you cry.
Right.
Well, I want to cry. It hurts. So, or going outside, me saying to him one time that football in my era, and I'm in the ninth grade now, like a big star, right? Ninth grade, God. Yeah. Anyway, I said, you can't handle guys like you couldn't handle guys like me. I'm in the ninth grade. He's 6'3", 270. He moves the furniture around in the living room. All I can tell you at the end of the day, my mom was crying and I had blood coming out my ear. I lost the 1-on-1. I didn't do well in the Oklahoma drill. So, but Dad was that way. Don't show any emotion. Don't show any weakness. It's a sad thing that we find ourselves in these traps sometimes that we don't want to show our weaknesses. We feel like we're less than a man or less than a woman, less than an adult. So I was really going through some tough times there, but her role, keeping that rudder in the water with the job that I had, as important as it was instrumental. And I think people will see that. And it was a great team. I get emotional talking about her and how that worked, but this book's going to be a hit. And I'm so grateful for that because it meant so much to me to write it and finish it in lieu of all the things that happened with her. So appreciate everybody. Amazon's a good spot. Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, or jrsbbq.com. Appreciate it.
And we appreciate you guys clicking the subscribe button, leaving us a 5-star review. Follow us on Twitter if you'd like to ask a question about next week's Clash of the Champions show. I'm sure by the time you hear this, Silva will have something pinned to the top. It's at JR Grilling. That's at JR Grilling on Twitter. And hey, you would have heard this show earlier this week had you already subscribed to the new Super Patreon. You get all 5 of my shows early and ad-free, all the research, some bonus content. And earlier in the week, Eric Bischoff talked about how his most recent run in WWE went. The good, the bad, and the ugly. He's never talked about it before. It's only here on our Super Patreon, adfreeshows.com. We'll see you next week, every Thursday, right here on Westwood One for Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Give the ultimate gift to the wrestling fan in your life this holiday season. The gift of ad-free shows. Head over to adfreegift.com now to purchase an ad-free show subscription for a friend or loved one. The best value in wrestling podcasts with several plans to choose from. Starting as low as just $9 a month. You're gifting early ad-free access to Conrad Thompson's weekly podcast, plus access to the full podcast archive library and access to the Patreon where you can join the community chat and submit your questions for the shows. Want more? Plans starting at $29 a month get access to over 100,000 hours of other exclusive content from legends like The Godfather, Tully Blanchard, Lex Luger, David Crockett, Downtown Bruno, and many more. Plus, interactive Q&As and watch-alongs with your favorite podcast hosts and Hall of Famers. Let's hear from some of our ad-free show's family members.
Listening to podcasts without ads is pretty cool, but listening to bonus exclusive content is even better.
AFS has meant so much to me through the moments and memories created.
My friendships that I've made so far, it's been one heck of an experience.
Not only do you get great content and so much historical information, but you're also part of a community here, even more so a family.
So many different walks of life being brought together by one commonality of wrestling.
The community and the family feel with all the members. who have been very welcoming.
How many places do you get to go to actually interview stars like Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff?
When I joined ad-free shows, Eric actually called me to thank me personally. That moment made me realize just how special this community is.
And it's a global family.
It's a family that I never dreamed of having. It's been a heck of a ride, and can't wait for more to come.
Thank you, ad-free shows, for celebrating wrestling's greatest era and for making podcasts that are just too sweet. And just know that you've got a member for life.
Visit adfreegift.com today and gift an ad-free shows membership to the wrestling fan in your life this Christmas.